They are common figures in the countryside, arms outstretched, old clothes, sewn eyes standing in the middle of the fields, scarecrows. But in popular culture, they have taken on another role. They left the fields and ended up in nightmares. In horror movies, these inert dolls come to life, chase, scare, and watch over the void with a sinister presence. They are not heroes, nor are they funny. They are made of cloth and straw, and cause discomfort just by looking at them. Now, what if I told you that there is a village where these figures are everywhere, sitting on park benches, peeking through windows, leaning against lampposts, or even inside the school? And the strangest thing, they are the majority. In certain places, all you see are scarecrows. There are no children running around, no neighbors chatting, only button eyes and sewn mouths. But why would anyone do that? Why fill an entire town with creatures that, for many people, represent fear? What is the story behind a village where silence is shared between humans and dolls? Today, Bello Mundo takes you to Nagoro, the Japanese village where scarecrows have taken over. A remote destination, isolated in the mountains, that looks like something out of a movie script. But it really exists. Japan is known for being a country of advanced technology, organized cities, and a culture that impresses the world. But behind this modern and efficient image, the country experiences a silent contrast that few people outside of it notice. The population is declining and aging at a rate that no other country on the planet can match. Today, just over 7 children are born per 1,000 inhabitants, the lowest number ever recorded in Japanese history. It is as if each new generation were smaller than the previous one, and the streets were gradually losing their younger voices. Meanwhile, almost 30% of Japanese people are over 65 years old. Daycare centers are emptying, kindergartens are closing, and children's stores are disappearing. On supermarket shelves, more diapers are sold for the elderly than for babies. This imbalance has turned Japan into a country that is aging faster than it can renew itself. Economists call this a demographic crisis, but for those who live there, the impact is much simpler and more visible. In many rural areas, schools have closed, train lines have ceased to operate, and entire towns have begun to disappear from the map. The government is trying to encourage marriage and childbirth, but the pace of time seems impossible to reverse. If the trend continues, millions of homes are likely to remain empty, and hundreds of villages are at risk of disappearing completely in the coming decades. And this prediction has already begun to come true. In rural Japan, there is a village that symbolizes this silent disappearance. Its name is Nagoro, and that's where we're going now. Nagoro is hidden among the mountains of Shikoku Island in southern Japan. It is a rural area surrounded by dense forests and crossed by a river with waters so clear that they reflect the sky. The village belongs to the municipality of Miyoshi within the famous Iya Valley, one of the most isolated and least populated areas in the country. Getting there is no easy task. There is no train station, airport, or direct bus line. Visitors must drive for hours on a narrow road that winds between cliffs, suspension bridges, and sharp curves. It is the kind of journey that makes any passenger think twice before continuing, and that is why Nagoro has remained isolated from the rest of Japan for generations. The Japanese call this region Tenku no Sato, which literally translates as village in the sky. A beautiful, almost poetic name, but one that hides a harsh reality. The same isolation that once guaranteed the residents peace and quiet is now condemning the village to oblivion. For much of the last century, Nagoro was like many other rural Japanese communities, small but full of life. Families lived off what they grew, rice, potatoes, vegetables, and flowers. The simple wooden houses lined the slopes of the valley. In the center of the village, a school, a temple, and a small store served as meeting places. The routine was predictable but harmonious, and each season dictated the rhythm of life. Spring was planting time, summer was harvest time, fall was food preservation time, and winter was repair time for what the weather had damaged. Neighbors helped each other with farm work and, in return, shared food, firewood, and companionship. It was a simple but solid life, a place where everyone knew each other by name, and each generation grew up on the same piece of land as the previous one. For a long time, nothing seemed to change, until the outside world began to accelerate, and Nagoro stood still in time. Starting in the 70s and 80s, as happened in so many rural Japanese communities, young people began to leave their villages in search of opportunities in the big cities. Tokyo, Osaka, Kobe, metropolises that offered jobs, education, and a future that the countryside could no longer promise. Meanwhile, those who remained in the valley grew old. Each generation had fewer children than the previous one, until the cycle of births simply stopped. In its heyday, the village had about 300 residents. It was a small community, but full of life. There was a school, a temple, seasonal festivals, and a sense of unity that made this corner of the mountains a thriving refuge. But as the years passed, the number dwindled. First 200, then 100, then 50. And the curve never rose again. The last babies were born in the early 2000s. After that, the sound of children playing disappeared from the valley. It had been more than 20 years without a new generation. The result was a place that gradually withered away in population, energy, and hope. Without children, the school lost students until it closed for good. Without young people to work, businesses could not survive. The last grocery store closed its doors long ago. By then, the village was already called Genkai Shuraku, a term used in Japan to describe settlements on the edge, communities threatened with disappearance due to a lack of people. And it was not an isolated case. In 2020, the country already had more than 20,000 villages in this condition, double what there were 10 years earlier. Almost a third of Japan's rural areas are now in this critical state, and the number is only growing. Seeing that forgotten piece of the mountains is to understand this phenomenon up close. In the 2010s, there were about 35 human residents left. In 2023, the number dropped to 27. And now, in 2025, there are only 25 people, most of whom are over 60 years old. The depopulation was so severe that the place earned the nickname Village on the Brink of Extinction. Anyone who passes through there feels the weight of a community that has almost become a ghost town. Uninhabited houses rot among the trees. Former agricultural fields have been taken over by weeds. It is a portrait of human desertification. And it was precisely in this scenario of farewells that an unexpected character entered the scene. A woman who decided to bring life back to the village, even if it was a life made of cloth and cotton. The story of the dolls only exists because of Tsukimi Ayano, the woman who decided to sew together the village's memories. She was born there when the place still had children's laughter, full fields, and hope for the future. She grew up surrounded by mountains and neighbors who knew each other by name, at a time when Nagoro still seemed eternal. As a young woman, she followed the same path as so many others. She left home to work, lived in another city, and built her own life far away. But after many years, fate brought her back. She returned to care for her elderly parents and found a scene she barely recognized. The streets were empty. The houses were silent. Many of the former residents had died, others had moved away and never returned. Of the 300 inhabitants who once filled the village, only a few elderly people remained scattered across the hills. What was once a lively community seemed to have turned into a memory. It was on this return that something unexpected happened. The idea for the dolls came about in an unpretentious way. Tsukimi was trying to grow a vegetable garden near her home, some vegetables, greens, but the birds and deer insisted on destroying the newly planted seeds. To solve the problem, she decided to resort to an old country tactic, making a scarecrow. She used what she had on hand and stuffed old clothes with straw and paper, assembled a wooden cross, and molded a cloth head with a painted face. When it was ready, she realized that, perhaps out of affection, the doll had come to resemble her father, who was already quite elderly at the time. Without realizing it, she had created a memory with form and presence. She placed the doll in the garden and, for a moment, felt as if he were there again, tending the land. That feeling awakened something in her. If she could recreate the image of her father, why not that of all the others who had passed away? That was how Tsukimi Ayano began to sew together the village's past, stitch by stitch, doll by doll. Over time, new figures appeared one by one, using straw, newspaper, and old fabrics. She sewed each face by hand, carefully painted the eyes, and chose clothes that had belonged to the real residents. Each piece was a memory. A neighbor who died, a friend who moved away, a child who grew up far away. Soon, the dolls began to fill the empty spaces in the village. At the entrance to the village, farmers in hats rest leaning against a pole as if they were killing time after work. A little further on, a fisherman casts his line into a stream. Further on, a lady works in a field, bent over like so many grandmothers did in real life. Near the old bus stop, a group of dolls waits for the bus that never comes, carrying empty shopping bags. And what was once a simple scarecrow became something much bigger. Without realizing it, Ayano was repopulating Nagoro. In the beginning, there were only a few. But when other residents began asking her to make figures of deceased relatives, the number grew rapidly. Today, it is estimated that there are more than 400 dolls scattered throughout the village, far more than the 25 real inhabitants who still live there. Each one has a name, a story, and a specific place. And one of the coolest curiosities of the place is the Scarecrow Ledger. It is located in a rest area near Ayano's house, and any visitor can leaf through it. There, a handwritten notice explains that these dolls are not ordinary scarecrows. Each one has its own name, personality, and even a life story, all carefully recorded on the pages. One of the most famous characters is the mayor of the Scarecrows, named Tsukimi Ayano. In the book, he is described as a firm and serious man, but in his youth he was the most troublesome student in school. According to the book, he studied at a prestigious university, worked for a large company, and returned to the village at the age of 30 to marry his childhood friend, Kyo. Today, he is in his third symbolic term and still helps protect the mountains as a member of the Forestry Commission. His doll wears a navy blue Armani suit with wide shoulder pads, and the text says that he knows how to use his look like no one else, whether at work or on special occasions. It's these details that bring the dolls to life, and in a way, the entire village. But the place that draws the most attention is the old school, the same building that closed in 2012. That's where the most symbolic dolls are, and also the scariest ones. And before we continue, if you've made it this far, it's because you enjoyed the video. So give us some support. Click like and use Hypar's new feature to help the channel continue bringing you incredible stories like this one. No place represents that village as well as the old school. For decades, it was the heart of the community. Children from neighboring villages came to study there, filling the hallways with voices and laughter that echoed through the valley. But as the young people left and births ceased, the sound of classes gradually faded into silence. In the 2000s, the classes shrunk so much that only 2 students remained. In 2012, these last students graduated, and the building closed its doors. The space that once bustled with life became a mansion, frozen in time, covered in dust and memories. Seeing the empty building, the seamstress had a different idea. She decided to bring movement back to that place, albeit with dolls. She made figures of school-aged children and placed them at their desks, looking straight ahead as if they were attending class. She also created cloth teachers with chalk in their hands and concentrated expressions, eternally explaining subjects on the blackboard. Today, anyone looking through the windows has the impression of interrupting a class that never ends. In the hallways, dolls leaning against the walls resemble students waiting for recess. On the stairs, a small group seems to be chatting before the next lesson. And in the gym, others swing on old rusty toys, while a couple improvises a wedding, complete with guests. Over time, the seamstress took this initiative even further. She symbolically reopened the school on a few days of the year and recreated the undokai, the traditional Japanese sports festival, only with dolls. On an autumn Sunday, more than 40 figures occupied the courtyard in races, tug-of-war, and basketball games. Even yakisoba and takoyaki stalls were set up, completing the scene. The event was repeated for several years and brought back a little joy to the valley. The few living residents joined the dolls to play school for a day. With no real children, that corner of Japan reinvented the sound of them. And for a brief moment, the silence of the mountains seemed full of laughter again. Over the years, the small village lost in the mountains won over the world. Newspapers, magazines, and documentary filmmakers were enchanted by the contrast between the silence of that valley and the colorful dolls scattered everywhere. What was once just a portrait of Japanese depopulation has become a kind of open-air museum, a place where loneliness has taken shape, color, and expression. Reporters from different countries travel hours on narrow roads just to record what remains of the community. Some describe the village as a delicate tribute to those who have passed away. Others see it as a sad reminder of what happens when urban progress swallows the countryside. But everyone leaves with the same feeling. That hidden corner of Japan is a rare mixture of beauty, melancholy, and frozen time. The dolls changed the fate of the place. Even without tourist infrastructure, the flow of visitors has grown year after year. Some arrive curious, wanting to understand the reason for so many figures scattered around. Others prefer to walk in silence, observing each cloth face, as if visiting a cemetery where no one has been buried, but everyone is still present. Each figure seems to hold a secret, a gesture, a memory. With the internet, its fame has multiplied. Videos and photos taken by travelers went viral on social media, and the village became known by curious nicknames: the village of soul dolls and the place where the dead remain present. Even so, the future of that corner of the mountains is uncertain. When the last residents leave, perhaps only she will remain, and after her, only the dolls. But perhaps that is how the place will survive, in silence made of cloth, memories, and eternity. And now I want to hear from you. Did you already know the story of Nagoro, the village inhabited by dolls? Tell us in the comments what caught your attention most about this place. And of course, if you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and use YouTube's Hyper feature to help this content reach even more people. Share it with those who love curious stories and places that seem to come from another world. See you in the next video here at Bello Mundo. Until the next trip,